I'm Adrian Hon, and I'm CEO at Six to Start. We make a flagship game called Zombies Run. It's a running game combined with a fitness app. Basically, we want to help people make running more exciting for themselves.
Can you see what's happening?
And what you do is you go out running
You're getting close to it.
in the real world.
There's obviously something here someone wants to protect.
You've got your phone,
Do you think it's a warning?
you've got your headphones in, we put you into a zombie apocalypse, and you've got to run to survive.
I think we're going to find out how the apocalypse happens.
Because if you don't run fast enough, then you might get caught by the zombies.
We need to get out of here.
There's definitely room in the games industry for people with all kinds of talents. When I started, I thought you needed to be an artist or a programmer or a writer to get in. I wasn't any of those people, but I was into game design and I was into puzzle design, and kind of importantly, I became a producer. If you don't know what the job of a producer is, it's basically doing the thing that everyone else doesn't want to do, which is organizing people and making sure things are done on time and solving problems for people. And so that's a pretty general skill, you know, it's translatable and you get to be involved in all parts of game production, and there's a big difference between a bad producer and a good producer. So I think there are all sorts of roles.
My name is Rose Buahin, and I have the pleasure of interviewing the uber talented Adrian Hon tonight. So let me set the scene first and tell you a bit about Adrian. He's the co-founder and CEO at Six to Start, who are creators of game-like stories and story-like games, including the world's best-selling smartphone fitness game, Zombies Run, which has an incredible 10 million players. He's an author of A History of the Future in 100 Objects, available now from good bookstores. He's spoken at the flagship TED conference, the Long Now Foundation, Google X, and Disney Imagineering. And before becoming a games designer, Adrian was a neuroscientist and an experimental psychologist at Cambridge, Oxford, and the University of California and San Diego. So welcome, Adrian. I'm really excited to be sitting down with you, albeit virtually.
It's great to be here.
Awesome. I've got loads of questions for you, so I'm just going to dive in, if that's cool.
Sure.
Okay. So, I mean, I've given a little taster. You have an incredible CV, which includes writing, public speaking, directing, and games design. And I'm actually a big advocate of using transferable skills to get that job. So can we go back to the beginning? Can you tell us your journey from being a neuroscientist at university to director at play at Mind Candy? You know, how did you go from biology to gaming?
You know, it's not a straight line because that's not really a huge amount in common, I guess, directly. But I was always into games as a kid. I think a lot of people, you know, obviously were. And I had always thought it'd be great to sort of work in the games industry, actually. But when I was at school, I thought my maths wasn't good enough to become a programmer. And I wasn't, you know, good enough at drawing or art to become an artist. And I didn't really want to be a tester because those were like three ways that it seemed like you could get into games. And so I was like, well, it's not really going to work out. But when I went to university, I started doing, you know, my degree in biology. And there was this game that came out, like an alternate reality game. It was kind of the first alternate reality game of its kind, really. That was a promotion for this movie AI, and it was a game that took place on the web and in the real world over email and phone calls and websites and actors and just a really kind of like unusual game that was not, you know, a normal console game or PC game. And I remember playing that and thinking,
can you remember the name of the game?
Yeah, it was called The Beast. It didn't really have a sort of like public name because it was one of these games where you kind of stumbled onto it and you didn't have to like buy it. You just kind of found it. It seemed like it was like a treasure hunt. And I played it and I thought this was amazing. I would love to make this sort of thing because you don't need to be like a programmer. You just need to be like a puzzle designer or like a writer. And I started writing, so this is where it sort of comes in. I started writing a blog about alternate reality games at university. And I remember thinking, one day this is going to get me a job because I'm just going to make sure that if you type in alternate reality games I'm going to be on that list, at the top of that list, or certainly like Alternate Reality Games UK. And it worked because that's what happened. People were that in, and they'd see my blog, and because I'd be writing, every week about it, and they'd tell me about their games and their ideas. And it was, there are lots of good ideas and bad ideas and things I didn't think were going to work. But I remember when I got contacted about the game that would become Perplexity. So this was Michael Smith, who founded Mind Candy, and now is co-founder of Calm, if you've heard about that. He asked me to first help out on Perplexity, to sort of consult on it, and then eventually said, "Look, why don't you just go and work here full time?" And I was doing my PhD. I'd started a PhD in neuroscience at Oxford, which was kind of like it was a cool group. I wasn't like sitting there thinking, I hate this. It was a really interesting team, and it was something I was interested in. But I remember thinking, this opportunity is just like falling into my lap, and this is something I've wanted to do for a long time. And if it doesn't work out, I can always just go and do another PhD. And so I left after a year to become more or less like the first employee at that company. And when you start in such a small company, you wear so many different hats. And I was the game designer, but I was also like opening the mail, and answering the phones and everything.
That's a great learning curve as well, doing that.
Yeah. It's stressful, and it's kind of trial by fire, because you're sort of learning all this stuff from scratch. But for me, I loved it because I really like learning new things and just trying them out. And looking back at what we did, it just seems kind of ridiculous that such a small team did so much so quickly. We did a lot of things that you probably shouldn't do. Like burying treasure in a forest that you probably shouldn't be burying treasure in. I'd encourage it for anyone who is young and doesn't have a lot to lose.
That's awesome. So you followed your dream. You put it out there in the universe, and you followed your dream, and I love the fact that you always knew that you could just go back to do the PhD at any time. This was a window of opportunity that you had to take, which is great. That is exactly. I mean, there was like 3 years of writing blog posts and kind of hoping it would work out. But I think that you've got to play the long game with this sort of thing. I think you can make your own luck if you wait long enough. Yeah, love that. So I think Six to Start is a UK feel to good inspirational story. And I'm sure that there's many startups watching us today who'd love to know how the company was founded. So can you almost continue that journey? I guess like any good superhero stories, what's the origin story of Six to Start?
Well, so I worked on Perplexity at Mind Candy for about 3 years, and Mind Candy went on to make a much more successful game called Moshi Monsters, which if you know any kids, you probably know about. It's not as popular now, but like it was all the rage back then. And I wasn't into kids' video games. It's just not my thing. So I didn't really want to work on it. But a few people at Mind Candy, including my brother, Dan Hon, and Lisa Long, we went and set up a new company. We co-founded Six to Start, and the idea was we would start out by making alternate reality games like Perplexity and things, and we do consulting work for a few years because we already knew that people were interested in working with us. And then we would save up money in the bank, and then we'd make our own games. That was the idea. It didn't really work out that way, as most plans happen. It was being like a digital agency, like a sort of contract house, is just really, it's great in some ways, in that you get to work on all these different games, and people are paying you to do them, and and we were known for being really innovative. So people came to us expecting something kind of really cool and different. But it's stressful because you're always out there bidding on work, and either you have too much work because you've won too many contracts, which sounds ridiculous, but if you've got too much work, then you've got to go and hire up people and get contractors, and you're worried, can you deliver on time? Or you've got too little work, obviously, and then that's its own problem. And it was a really competitive time. There were lots of other companies doing similar sorts of things to us. And so we never really made any money at all, frankly. I mean, we paid our own bills just about, but we weren't able to save up the money that we thought we could to then go on, and make our own games. And that said, it was a really, it was really stressful, but it was also a really educational experience into, okay, can we make a game for Microsoft in 3 months? Can we make a game, do this consulting for Disney in 6 months? Can we, make a game for Channel 4, that's going to be on, spread across TV and, different places, and use actors and music, in 2 years, and juggle all that stuff. You just have to become really good really quickly about communicating with lots of different people. And that was another trial by fire. So if Mind Candy in Public City was, okay, we're trying to do something really ambitious and someone's given us this money, and how much can we do? Then at Six Start, it was, okay, we're just trying to do like just a ridiculous number of projects, all at once, and try and do our best. And, we won like a lot of awards, and the work we did, I'm really proud of like the work we did. And, I still talk to people about it, and people get in touch with the games that we did. We won Best of Show at South by Southwest back in 2009 for We Tell Stories, which is just, amazing. We won, got exhibited at the Museum of Modern Art. It was great, but it was also really difficult because, we were asking people to, people could have been paid more, at other companies, right? Including all the founders and the management. We could have all been paid more, but we did it because it was really interesting work.
Yeah. So, but what was the, again, there's more sacrifices that you've made. What was the timescale from, I guess, when you first started to winning that first award and getting that recognition?
It was so fast, which is kind of ridiculous. It was, because the company started in like 2007, and we already had a contract sort of in the works with Channel 4 for this big game, but it didn't, and it was going to be like, I don't know, like £1 million, right? It was going to be like a lot of money, and then it got cut down because there was a recession, and so that was a real tough time because we just didn't have the money that we thought we would to spend on that. And in the meantime, this project came along from Penguin Books, which was this sort of really, still such a great project. They wanted us to tell stories in ways that could only be told online. So we worked with 6 authors, 6 of their top authors, to sort of come up with these experiments. And one of them was a sort of little game story that was played over Google Maps. And this was the first time anyone had really done that sort of thing, playing around Google Maps. And there's another one, which was this really kind of different sort of choose your own adventure game that we did with Mohsen Hamid. And, we were fortunate because people knew who we were, like in London, and like around the world, and because they'd seen our work on Public City, and they just, they just emailed us, said, can you bid for this? And we just threw ourselves into it.
Wow. But do you feel there's a pressure to maintain that success then? Almost like, is it now pressure that every game must have that? Would you have an accolade as a KPI, for example? How does it work now?
We don't make as many new games as we did back then, So, and a lot of the stuff we did was not that good because we just didn't have enough money or time to do it. Or the clients were like really, they were really specific about what they wanted. And sometimes clients just don't want, like, they don't trust us, right? And so they don't trust us to do a good game. And so they're very specific about, oh, please make it this way. And I mean, maybe this sounds kind of like tooting our own horn too much, but I think the best results we've had with companies we worked with are when they trust us and they say, hey, like we think you're good, that's why we're hiring you, and here's the money, and please do a good job. Yeah. And I don't do it for the money, I do it so we can do good work and try something really interesting. And that's when we've been able to do some really cool stuff.
Yeah, your best stuff. So how big is your team? What's your team structure?
So now, the company's gone through all these different phases. So it's life. And now we're obviously focusing on Zombies Run. And we have about 11 full-time people, pretty much, around the world. And we also work with a whole network of contract writers and freelance writers and actors and people like that. So it's probably the biggest the company has been, I think, since it started, which is still pretty small, but we get an awful lot done. I think people are surprised whenever I talk to people in America or like, tech people, they're like, how is it only like, 8 or 10 people who are actually working on Zombies Run? So yeah, we try and keep it pretty compact.
That yeah, I mean, I'm going to come on to Zombies Run. That blows my mind, the amount of people that are responsible for that huge phenomenal. But we'll come to that. Hold that thought. I've got another question for you, still from a structural Six to Start aspect. So I think arguably they said there's 3 types of CEOs. There's the risk taker entrepreneur, the artist, maybe quality assurer, and then there's the operator, the people manager, who's focused on systems. My question is, which one are you? Or?
I had to look this up when you sent this, and I was like, I think that most CEOs are, have to be all of them, but they focus on different aspects at different times. So when I started at Six to Start, I wasn't the CEO. My brother was the CEO. And so I was the artist, really. I wanted to be like the chief creative officer. So I was like, I'm going to be the ideas person and I'll do the game design and things like that. And then, after a few years he left and then I became CEO. And I think that, I go through, you go through different phases because companies and products go through different phases. Yep. And especially when it comes to, games as a service, right? I think when you have a game like Destiny, or Fall Guys or Fortnite or whatever, then you have, at the start, you're taking a pretty big risk probably, right? And you're trying to hopefully make a really unusual kind of game that isn't on the market yet. And so you're being an entrepreneur and you're trying to innovate, trying to push the limits and trying to maybe push technical limits or resource limits or that sort of thing. And so that's kind of necessary. Then you're sort of making the game, you're designing the game. Obviously you need to be, because it's a small company, like I like getting involved in the game design and sort of visual design. And so I guess I'm sort of doing a lot more of the artist work there. And I think that's probably, certainly in big companies, that's unusual. Like, I don't think the CEO of Nintendo is like down designing the next Mario. Like that doesn't make sense, right? But I like doing that. I kind of would probably always want to do that to some extent because that's why I got into it in the first place. And I think that if you have someone who combines, the sort of CEO role and the game design, it means normally when you have that kind of company, you have like fights between like, okay, well, the artist wants more, they want more time and they want more money and they want to try different things and be riskier. And the business manager is like, look, we've got to make sure we make money and, make sure we sort of have recognize commercial realities and things like that. And they're both valid viewpoints, right? And if it's two different people, then they're just like, hopefully not fighting, but they're debating all the time. But if it's the same person, then you can kind of have that debate in your head, and other people sort of don't have to worry about it too much. And so that's something that I've tried to do. But then when you have like a success, if you have a success like Zombies Run or any other kind of game as a service, then you have to turn into the operator. Like, you can't just be like working and saying, okay, well, we're just going to make a new game every 6 months and every year. That's what I thought we were going to do. But as the Zombies Run has matured, and as we've realized, what people want, people don't actually want like brand new game from us every year. They don't want like us to sort of transform the game like every 2 years. They kind of, we've made what they want, and they just want more of that, and they want it to work better, and they want it to work on Apple Watch and Android Wear and all this stuff. And they do want new features, but they kind of want more, just for more sort of content. Yeah. And to do that sustainably, and to run a good company, you need to be, an operator where you are projecting out and you are making sure the budgets make sense, and you are making sure, hopefully people are happy, and you're running things sustainably, and you're not piling up technical debt and all of that. And so, but of course, if you just do that too much, then you miss out on the next big thing, and you don't keep on doing interesting things. And that is the thing that sort of keeps me up the most at night, which is like, okay, on the one hand, I need to make sure that what we do is sustainable and really streamline that. So we are like we're doing that as well as we can. But if you spend all your time on that, then you ignore, other opportunities. And there's no great answer to that, but that's what, that's a bit of a meandering answer. But yeah, trying to do all those three different hats, wear all those three different hats, at different times.
Well, what's your favorite hat there? That's the thing.
Well,
if you had a meeting, if there were 3 meeting rooms with those 3 elements, which one would you spend the most time in?
I mean, honestly, it really depends on how I feel. It does, because, people who know me, work, like every like few months, I get incredibly excited about like a new game idea or a new business idea. And I just be like, okay, I'll sort of write out like 1,000 words about it and say, I want to kickstart this immediately. And we keep on talking about, we need like a kickstart this button, like on my desk. So that kind of combination between entrepreneur and artist is probably, what draw me to this in the first place, and what I love about games and love about the internet, the ability to make something really quickly. But it is satisfying, to run a business and to do that properly, for sure.
So if I were to interview your team, would they concur with what you just said?
Well, it depends on who you talk to, and when they joined. Some people on the team have been with us for like Matt has been with us, for a long time, and he kind of remembers when we were sort of just throwing everything in the wall and seeing what would stick, and other people who joined more recently would be like, oh, this is a Zombies Run company, right? And so we're focused on that single product. They'd say, well, it's obviously more of a kind of operator, and maybe like artists, I guess, but yeah.
Well, funny you should say that, because we did just that, and we collated the results. So if you look at your script, I'm playing, we haven't.
Oh, wow.
Okay, just sorry, I mean, I've got a couple more questions just about, I guess, the culture, your work culture. I mean, there used to be talk in the industry about a crunch culture, working 13 plus hours a week, working weekends as well. I guess my question is, as a CEO, how do you plan to avoid this and just kind of eradicate this this practice completely?
Yeah. So, we absolutely, discourage and do not reward people for working like late. And I try to do that, and everyone that's seen in the company tries to model that behavior by logging off, at the end of the day. Like, if someone goes and messages me now on Slack, I'll tell them not to message me, right? I just don't want to know. And so we stick to very strict hours, which is like, 8 hours a day, and people get an hour for lunch. And if they want to, turn off the computer for that hour, that is fine, and we're very, we really, I'm not going to say like no one ever works beyond that. Like occasionally when we do live events or actors need to be recorded, from other parts of the world, then you sort of like move things around. But we always give people time off in lieu for extra time. So, when I think it's just, I think it's a sign of a badly run company, honestly, if you have people doing crunch. Like this stuff should be predictable, and when, we don't make as much money, as EA or CD Projekt Red or whoever, and yet we can afford, not to do crunch. So if we are less profitable, but we don't do crunch, then I don't really think there's any kind of excuse. Now, I think a lot of people will say, well, the reason why people are working, all these hours is because they love the project so much, and I can't stop them from like breaking in through the doors and working through the night. And I think the big companies, that's ridiculous. I think you can actually sort of just prohibit that. When I worked on Perplexity at the start, I kind of was actually working like almost every waking hour. And that was bad, because after like 2 or 3 years, I was just completely burned out. Like I couldn't do it anymore. And it's not a good idea. But at the same time, that felt fairer to me because I owned a piece of the company, and I had, genuine like creative control over what I was doing. I wasn't being told, to do this. And, it wasn't a case where someone would have just like thrown away my work, which would have been really disappointing. But and you can kind of do that to some extent, like when you're, 22, right? But you can't do that, if you've got a family, and this is why so many people leave the games industry when they hit, I mean, not even that old, when they hit, 30, 40, right? It's just unsustainable. And for us, I want people to stay in our company, for as long as they can. And, if they've got kids, if they've got family, or if they've got different sort of, work life situations, we want to make that work. And, that's the operator, in me as CEO, which is like, okay, well, how can we make this work for people? Because it's also smart business sense. I mean, because I think turnover means you lose so much expertise and knowledge, right? It's better to keep good people. And I think we have good people. If you just let people burn out, then you're just losing all this knowledge. I mean, if you think that your employees are kind of replaceable robots, then fine. But I don't think that's how you get good work from people.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I mention it because I think there's that perception of the games industry, especially with small to medium sized companies, that's expected or that's encouraged. So it's really good to kind of hear the feedback that you've given. And I think that also, as you've mentioned, I've been guilty of kind of working insane hours, but that's on me. And that's, it was never encouraged. It was just something that I would do, or I was passionate about a certain project. But I think it's really important, the feedback that you've given, it's really important to hear. So thank you for that. Can I just say also again that if anybody has any questions for you, to submit them in the Q&A tab at the bottom. Now, it would be remiss of me to sit here and not ask you about the phenomenally successful and immersive Zombies Run, which is actually perfect for your permitted daily exercise, as approved by Boris.
Yeah.
In our tiered lockdown. I used to play actually on a treadmill at the gym, as you have the incentive to get fit, but also you need to save lives, right? And because that's what the voice in my ear is telling me.
Yeah.
So again, similarly, can you just tell us about the idea behind it, the design, the route to market? Because I think it's another feel-good story, and it'd be good to hear how it all came about.
Yeah. So I've been interested in making a running game for years. I came to running quite late. I hated it at school, cross country and all of that, and just getting stitches and it being painful. But I got into a university, and I was really surprised, when the iPhone came out, that there weren't more running games or good running games. The games that were out there were kind of really interesting and really cool. They were like, sort of Pokemon Go-ish, or you'd see like a map and you'd have to like run to different locations. But if you run, that you can't be running and looking at your phone. Like that doesn't work. Like you'd either run in, you'd have an accident, or you'd have to stop every 30 seconds, right? And to me, that just showed that the designers didn't really understand like what running was, and or they thought their game was like so much better that people would put up with that. And I just kind of don't really think that's sort of possible yet. And the other thing that I noticed with other running games is that, they kind of, in Pokemon Go, you're sort of encouraged to go and visit new locations and sort of walk around new areas. But I don't know about you, but when I go running, I just have like 3 different routes that I use.
Yeah.
I'm not like an urban explorer. I'm going out to get some exercise, and I've got like a short one, a medium one, and a long run. And I found that I don't really want to be told to go somewhere differently. And so I thought, okay, someone should make a running game. I want to make a running game that doesn't require you to look at your screen. So it has to be audio only. And also it would have to work with wherever the player is already running. Right. So it would be a pretty simple game. I mean, it's probably got nothing on the screen when you're running. It has to be all audio. And I remember telling this to my friend Naomi Alderman, who's an author. She wrote the book The Power, which was like one of Obama's top books of the year a few years back, and it's being made into a huge like Amazon show. And we'd worked together, at Public City and on other projects. And I love working. I love working with like writers and other novelists. I think it's just it's like really fun to like get ideas from different storytellers. And so I told her this, and we knew that we wanted to work together. And she said, "Oh yeah, that's cool." And she just joined a running club, an online running club, and they asked the newcomers, why do you want to run? And some people said that they wanted to lose weight. Other people wanted to get fit. And one person said that they wanted to survive the zombie apocalypse. And this is like in 2011 that she mentioned this. And I was like, zombies, I'm sick of zombies. Like everyone's doing zombies. Everyone's doing Left 4 Dead. I don't want to do a zombie game. But then we sort of talked us through, and we said, though, like zombies work really well for like a running game, because you can't like, you can shoot zombies, but you can never really shoot them enough, right? That's a sort of thing in all zombie games and zombie movies. Like you can't really win against zombies by just like shooting them all. Like there's just going to be more and more. You got to like run. So that's like, that's great. That's like a good reason for why you're running. Another thing was, if you're in a post-apocalyptic world, then you're not taking the car everywhere. You're not cycling everywhere. Probably you actually do have to run, and there's lots of reasons for you to run, to go and get supplies or find survivors, or go and do reconnaissance or whatever. And we thought, wow, this is actually like pretty good. It's a pretty good balance, because you can have like an unlimited story. There's always like new things for you to be doing, new reasons for us to tell you to run more. And of course we can mix that with being chased by zombies, right? So you just have to kind of run faster. And, that would be a form of interval training. And that training is obviously a really kind of important way to develop, cardiac fitness. So we had the idea like really quickly, actually, like pretty much at that lunch. And then I went back to the company and I talked to our team. And Matt, who was there at the time, he was like really into audio, and I was like, wow, this like works out really well, because he's a director. Like, what skills do we have at the company? Can we shape this game around the skills that we have, rather than like hiring new people? And so he was like really into audio. I was like, oh yeah, this is going to work out really well. And I talked to our developer, and I basically said, look, is this technically feasible? I mean, are we just barking up the wrong tree? And so he said, yeah, no, we can do this. And so we made a Kickstarter very quickly. And this was one of the very first Kickstarter projects in the UK. In fact, we got press, not even because necessarily we were a cool game, but because we were on Kickstarter, believe it or not. And so that was like and in fact, you weren't even meant to be on Kickstarter at the time. It was only launched in America. We had to get one of our board members to do it for us. So we moved super fast, and you can't do this on Kickstarter now, by the way, because like there's just too much like competition. But we moved super fast, and we put it up there, and it was just so, I can't like describe like how exciting it was to launch it, because every time someone backs you on Kickstarter, you get like an email saying someone's giving you $20 or $50 or whatever, and these emails were just like flying in, like every like 2 minutes or something, and like, to compare it to when we'd be kind of like agonizing over whether we would like win a contract worth $10,000 or £20,000, whatever, and people were just like paying us money, of their own free will, and in the end, it was like $73,000. So it wasn't like some massive amount of money. Anyone in games development will know that's barely anything, frankly, to make a game. But it was from 3,500 people, and it really caught fire online and on social media. And we thought, okay, if people have given us this amount of money for a game that doesn't even exist yet, right? It's just a video. Like this is gonna work. So we just stopped doing. We kind of stopped doing all the projects we could do, and then we focused everything on Zombies Run, and we put out the game. And I'm really proud that we put it out like on time. Like all Kickstarters are late, but we got there just by one day, and it blew up. And pretty much that day we kind of switched from doing work for other companies to just making games for, self-publishing games essentially. And yeah, it was, I mean, at the time it felt incredibly stressful and felt like things were going to fall apart every single day. But looking back, it was super exciting.
Wow. I mean, just hearing that story, because, you found that gap in the market, you almost did your consumer research, and, that was validated by the Kickstarter, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, so as I said at the start, you're like 10 million players now. How did you guys celebrate the first million?
So I think we only got to that when the app started like going free. So I remember though when, because at the start the game was a paid app and it cost $8. And even at the time, people were just like, this is like outrageous. How can you possibly charge $8 for an app? You can't charge 99 cents for an app these days, right? But I remember, we kept on going through, milestones where we'd be like, okay, we have more players and, could fit into Wembley Stadium. And I don't know, I think we probably don't like we don't really celebrate as much as we should. And that's probably my fault. And I think that partly comes from, I'm always like, if we hit like 1 million people, I'm always like, okay, but what about 2 million people? I'm sort of never really satisfied, with the milestones we get to. So, and that's a fault, because you should go and celebrate what you have rather than be like always like, okay, what's next? But I think it's that impatience that also made Zombies Run possible, because I was like, like I'm sick of all these other games that don't work. I want to make my own game. Let's get on with it. So swings and roundabouts a little bit.
Awesome. I've got a quick question for you before I kind of go to some questions that have come in. What's your beef with the movie Minority Report starring Tom Cruise and Colin Farrell?
I have no beef. I love it. It is one of my favorite movies. I get.
Sorry.
I did tweet about it. Yeah, the other day. I was sort of making fun of it because I think I was basically saying, well, the funny thing about Minority Report, which is that, if you've ever, Minority Report is a reason why like Microsoft Kinect became so popular, because everyone was like, wow, in the future, everyone will be just, doing like motion sensing and we'll be like throwing things around on our screens of our hands. And it's a little bit like, you stop to think about that for about 5 minutes and you realize it would be really tiring to like just hold your hands up like in the air and do things like that. So that's kind of the specific thing that I was making fun of. The movie I love. It is one of my favorite sci-fi movies, I've got to say.
Phew, okay, that's cool. All the Twitter like, what? I'm going to ask him. Okay, we've got one question that's come through here, anonymous question. Adrian has spoken about a few ways that he's made his ideas happen, getting that job on an ARG or creating a running game. What's his secret? And have there been any projects or ideas that didn't pan out, which you've learned from?
I mean, some of them are, well, I mean, I'll start with the things that didn't work out. I mean, you can just go and have a look at, the apps that we released on the App Store and haven't like blown up. We were really excited about, I remember there's this whole phenomenon a few years back about the 7-minute workout, the scientific 7-minute workout, devised by, the New York Times kind of. And it blew up. People were like downloading the app. It was the whole thing. And I thought, oh, this, I did it. I was like, this workout sucks. It's really boring. And how do people put up with this? I bet we can make a better like 7-minute workout. And so we kind of gamified it essentially. We made it more interactive and we made it more flexible. And we, added a story to it and did all this stuff. And I was really excited about it. And people liked it. But it was probably just too complicated, honestly. And it was really hard. And it just never really took off. But we learned a lot from it. I mean, I think we learned something from all the projects we do that don't succeed. And we do take away things from them. That superhero workout game brought us to the attention of Marvel, who at first said, by the way, do you know that superhero is like a trademark jointly owned by DC and Marvel, so you shouldn't use the word. I was like, well, I choose not to like believe this. But also, it was really fun sort of talking to them about potential projects. And I think that if you just do enough projects, then eventually some of them will be a hit, and you get like a better sixth sense for what's going to work. I mean, people at Start and my friends will know that like I just keep on coming out with like ideas all the time and getting unreasonably excited about them. And my sort of internal metric is, if I continue to be excited for like a year, then maybe it's worth doing something about it. But usually I sort of like get bored of it and realize there's some problems. I think the other part of the secret is just doing a lot of research. It's just really thinking about it really hard and talking to a lot of people about it. And saying, okay, have other people tried this and what works? I think, and I find that process really interesting. Actually, I really like doing research. When we did our first Kickstarter for Zombies Run, and it was successful, people would contact us and say, hey, what's your secret? How do you have Kickstarter success? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, if it was that easy, then I just do it all the time. But I said, what you should do is you should go and like look at the other successful Kickstarters. And they said, oh, how do I do that? And I said, here's what I did. I looked through about 5,000 Kickstarters before doing Zombies Run. Just like, because I found it interesting because I was just like, well, I mean, it doesn't take that long. Like, you just like click through it. You can do it like in a couple of weeks and you see patterns and you'd be like, okay, well, it looks like you should offer these kind of rewards, and here's what people want to know. Now, again, you kind of don't really need to do it that way now, but I think when you can learn a lot just by sort of putting the elbow grease in. Hopefully it's interesting. That's the thing. If it's really boring, then maybe you should find something else to do. But for me, I found it really interesting.
God, I love that. I love that focus. I said in the intro about you that you were a writer. And we've got a question about books.
Yes.
Can we hear more about your books? Do you think any of the ideas for scary future artifacts that you dreamt up could actually come true? Have you ever used ideas for them in games?
I think, yeah. I I think at least half of the scary artifacts will probably come true. I mean, some of them are really like obvious, like one of the artifacts I sort of talk about are driverless cars, and we're going to have them at some point. I don't know exactly when. And things like weaponized drones and digital religions and things like that. I think a lot of these things are kind of inevitable, although they will probably look a little bit different than what I think. If you're like super into science fiction, you probably go and read a lot of the ideas I come up with, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I've already read that somewhere else, which is true. I mean, I think it's really hard to be original in science fiction these days. There's so many people writing. But what I try to do is kind of like think, okay, but then what happens? Okay, if you have driverless cars, okay, so that's great. You can have a snooze in the car, but then what happens? And then what happens after that? And what happens after that? And that's where it becomes interesting for me, and thinking about what it does for normal people. I don't know whether the ideas that I have in books sort of make it into games directly. I think you have to be so, it's in some ways it's quite expensive to take risks in games, because I think that's why a lot of games are really quite conservative when you think about it in terms of like storytelling, or normally games only innovate in one way. And I think if there's any mistake that we've made at Six Star, or I've made in designing games, is that sometimes we try and innovate in like 3 different axes simultaneously. And I think that's just incredibly risky, and if you look at something like if you look at the sort of even the most innovative games, usually they're innovating only in one way. They're not trying to be like, okay, and we're also going to make a new, game controller, and we're also going to do it in virtual reality, and we're also going to try and, get this new kind of writer to do it. So I think, the ideas I have in my book are almost kind of a bit too, too wild to sort of put in some of the games. I am writing a book about gamification, and one of the things I talk about is a game to make mopping more fun, actually. And like, so I go through all these like ideas, like, okay, how could I make teaching the violin more fun? How could I make doing household chores more fun? And that's been kind of interesting. And I'd actually love to make some of those games, but there's only so much time.
So can I ask, what's your thought about the UK games industry in terms of, I guess, how it's evolved over the years and the evolution of play? I mean, for example, do you see a greater shift to mobile gaming, games on the go in 5-10 years' time?
Well, I mean, we already have like a massive, most of the money in the games industry is in mobile games now, although, different kinds of games. I think that the whole games industry is going to keep on growing pretty strongly. And I think we're going to see more. I don't know how much a mobile game like Candy Crush honestly has in common with, something like The Last of Us, or Grand Theft Auto. I mean, they're both games. But it'd be like saying, okay, how much does, does a reality TV show have with BBC News or with, Minority Report? And so I think that and that's good. It's great that we have that much variety. I think from a business point of view, we're going to see more consolidation, actually. We're already seeing that, companies are just being bought by other companies. And we go through cycles of that. And that happened in like the 90s and 2000s. It's happening again now. The pound's weaker, frankly, and it's just cheaper for foreign companies to sort of come in, and games are just a hot area. That's why there's so much money flooding in. I would love for the UK to have, I think the UK is like incredibly imaginative, but I think that I would love for there to be more successful indies, honestly. I think there are some. But I think that America does a better job at like fostering, indies. And, I think we've got some great universities here, but when I go to, NYU or USC and I look at their games courses, I think it's so cool, like what they do there. And I haven't seen anything quite like that in the UK. If I was going to generalize, I think the UK, because of the education system, the degree system, it really encourages people to specialize too early. People like, oh, I'm going to become a programmer, I'm going to become an artist, I'm going to become, a writer. And in America, it's a little bit more flexible. It's not, it's more socially acceptable, frankly, to sort of do a games course where you're like putting out like more, more innovative stuff. And I would love to see that happen and, be part of that to some extent, for sure.
But that's the thing. Do you think there's still more work to be done to almost encourage careers leaders, if you like, to showcase that games is a viable career path? Do you think we're there yet?
I mean, so in some ways, I think we kind of are there in the sense that just games like massive, right? I mean, who doesn't play games? So like culturally, games have won. I think as a career path, I think what I'm, especially for people from different backgrounds, yes, people should be more encouraged to go into that, because I think that's where we have like innovation. I think we'll have more interesting games, so we have different people coming into the games industry, and we really need that. I think there is a bit of an attitude for people who run big games companies to be like, yeah, I want more people coming into the games industry so we can have a bigger army of like, programmer bots and artist bots and like, and QA bots. I'm like, well, I don't really want that. I mean, I want, like I would love to see more people who are kind of like, there's always going to be big companies and small companies, but I would love to see like a bit of a better balance, I guess, of people who are more empowered to be kind of creative and to sort of, try out new things.
Yeah.
And I do worry that some of the advice that is going, out there is a little bit skewed towards, the desires of, the biggest companies.
Yeah. Yeah, I can appreciate that. What can we look forward to from Six to Start this year? I know we're kind of,
we are we sort of like figured out that, last year our production was kind of really interrupted, from the pandemic. And so, we were going to be putting out a lot more of our, we were going to be putting out season 9 of our main story, and we had to kind of put that on hold. And so we made a whole new different story. And so we are resuming that story this year, which is really exciting because people have been waiting for that. It's, they've been on the cliffhanger and they want to know what's going to happen next. So we're going to resume that. We're putting out more stories than ever before. We're putting out more home workouts. So, Zombies Run has always been about walking and jogging and running, but now we're doing home workouts, and that's really exciting. Awesome. We're doing new kinds of virtual races. There's a new storyline that we haven't announced yet that is, super, super exciting. Can't wait for that to come out. But, we're really, we're sort of really focused on making the existing game just like work better. Even though Zombies Run has been out for almost, 9 years now, people come across it and they're like, wow, check out this cool new game, Zombies Run. I'm like, we've been working on it for 9 years, but it still kind of feels fresh to people. It still feels like really unusual and new. And so, we don't want to be kind of blowing it up too much. We want to, make sure it remains good and really stable.
Yeah. Now we are short on time, but we have had a question about Zombies Run. So if you could kind of facilitate a quick answer on this one.
Yeah.
The question is, can you tell us about how you engage with the Zombies Run community? You mentioned events early in this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's changed over time. I mean, social media has been the main way we've done it, through Twitter, and then in Facebook. We have our own private forum that players are part of, and we have done meetups or participated in meetups. So twice every year, people would do meetups in London for the virtual races we do. And that's always been really fun to go to. Obviously, we haven't been able to do that, in 2020. We've started doing more stuff online. We don't, we're sort of pretty, and actually our social media team, Sabrina and Matt have been doing more kind of Instagram live Q&As and things like that. We're a little bit different from some games companies, which use Discords and, increasingly and things like that. But I try and be responsive. I guess if people, I go onto our Reddit subreddit and I'll just go, someone recently was asking, hey, what's happening with Zombies Run on Apple Watch? And I just wrote this 300-word reply saying, well, here's what's happening. I'll just go and tell you. And, I like being open. But I think the work speaks for itself to some degree. So we don't kind of try and over-explain it.
Awesome. Can I ask you quickly, final question? What's your favourite game ever? And don't say one of yours.
Favorite game ever. I think I super enjoyed Return of the Obra Dinn, which was quite new. So I love it not just because it's kind of got such great gameplay, and it's got and it was so satisfying to play. But also, I just admire the fact that it was made by one person. I just can't believe it, and from a business and from an artistic point of view, Lucas Pope, the designer, he just hit out of the park. It's just so, behind the scenes, I'm just so admiring of what he managed to do there and how he conducted it and how he did it completely in the open. I mean, you can go onto the forums and see him just talking about well, today I added this new model. And he wasn't really secretive about it, Yeah. And so I love that. And sometimes, I'll admit to being jealous of people's success. And for him, I'm just this guy's just awesome. I hope he is 10 times more successful,
Awesome. Thank you. And with that, we're going to wrap up for this evening. Massive thank you, Adrian, for speaking with us tonight. And for those that tuned in and submitted questions, our next Ensemble Salon will be where Adrian will be interviewing the game artist and writer Catherine Unger.
Thank you for the questions. They're awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.